Some major takeaways from this interview with Hardly Initiated and Isis Morales. Don't worship money, don't lie on God, and do not put everything on social media. Isis was doing a lot with the whole God thing. I was definitely triggered. I don't think she was getting messages from God. She may have been getting them from the Prince of Darkness, but it is clear that Isis traded her body for marriage because she worshipped this idea of marriage. And it just got her into a whole bunch of mess. I agree with Dr. Spirit that she needs to get off of this emotional roller coaster, interviewing with people. I hope nobody else asked her for an interview, but she might get on ABC or one of those morning shows because people love nonsense. Oh my God. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Sharice and I help Black men and women heal from trauma and toxic relationships. This is my second video on Isis. If you haven't seen the first one, I point out all the red flags and the toxic signs in her story. She's come back, or she hasn't gone away to heal. And I think it's quite problematic. And I think it'd be very helpful for me to go through her interview and point out some of the inaccuracies in her story. I think she's definitely telling half truths. She has not told us everything. She doesn't have to tell us everything, but if you're positioning yourself as this vulnerable, transparent person, if you're lying, like she's lying about things. I don't know what she's lying about, but she's definitely lying about things. I want to say a quick word on the guys of Hardly Initiated. Bro, y'all need to do better. This was highly inappropriate to invite her on in this capacity. This was similar to Samantha, the woman who was married to Tyrese, just crying. Like, this is exploitation. And I really expected better of you guys. I hop back in and out to their channel, their podcast, maybe once a year. I reviewed a video that they did a year ago, and I was there soon after they started their podcast when they were still like on their boy shit, okay? Really not treating women well. And I think they've learned a lot from the guests on their channel to be better. But bro, y'all still not married. I don't know if they're like in relationships because I know they've been dating. And I don't watch the show enough to know if they're partnered. You could tell me, are these guys partnered? Do they have some insight? Because if you were talking to your woman, even just casually about the next person you were going to invite or, what I think would be best, if you have a wise woman, she would have told you, don't put that woman on your show. It's just a bunch of BS and nonsense. And right, not to say this lady didn't go through a lot of traumatic things. She did, but she was not appropriate to be on their show at this time. Also, I hate the Fight the Flesh bracelet, but I know it's not made for me. It's just for money. I would much prefer what would Jesus do, but whatever. They're allowed to run their business however they want to run it. Okay, that's the end of my spiel on the Hardly Initiated guys. There is this very common thing in communities with a lot of trauma, a lot of generational trauma, poor parental supervision, where they perceive themselves, women like Isis perceive themselves to have been protected when you literally were not, right? You literally were not protected as a child. And her mother's mother, having been people who experienced sexual abuse. I just want people to tell the truth. Maybe that's it. And that's a hard thing to do. I think telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth is a difficult thing to do. So number one, Isis was not protected. Everyone does not go through a experience of childhood sexual abuse. It is very common, but I'm telling you, those children have not been protected. I know it's not an anomaly for 13-year-olds to be having sex, but I want you to think back to middle school. We're talking 6th, 7th, 8th grade. There were particular girls who were having sex. Everyone was not having sex. There were particular girls who came from particular backgrounds who were having sex. So when Isis said that she was 13 years old, having sex with a 17-year-old, girl, when do you even have time to do that? You know what I mean? This is the lack of protection, lack of parental supervision, mom working all the time, and she can brag about her mom, having her doctorate and doing all these amazing things. But I can tell you the emotional maturity was lacking. I promise you, because it's so clear in Isis. And she got it from her mother because that's the person who raised her. Her father is the one who assaulted her mother. She's a product of rape. So her father was nowhere to be seen. She didn't make that clear on this interview with the guys. I think they knew about it, but the way it was phrased, the one guy, he's still asking her, like, where was your father? Where was your father this time? Her father raped her mother. He was nowhere. What are you talking about? We hear more of the story of how Isis became a woman who married a man that she knew for weeks and was blindsided by the trauma of it all. You know, when she talked about her first child, when she told us she got pregnant on purpose when she was 18. And I said, you know, that's definitely concerning. We get additional details that she got pregnant by a man, right, who was a few years older than her. She's 18, who she met on a train, and she was pregnant within weeks. This person is still somebody that she's friends with, but this is also why I think it's difficult for women to view themselves as victims or having been victimized, or somebody was a predator towards you, because you're so used to not being protected. You're so used to be taken advantage of that you think it's normal. Like, this is just normal. For a man to meet you on a train and be explaining to you that he wants you to have his baby. Girl, what? Girl, what? This is why I know she's not telling us all the things. She's not telling us all the things. She also said she had 5 children. Help me understand. I know she had 2 boys before she met her husband. She has 3 kids with her husband. Is that? Because I hear two girls. There must be a in-between child or something that we don't know about. So let's keep going. She's talking about, on one hand, not seeing healthy marriages in her family, but using the strategy that the women in her family have picked to choose a husband. Make it make sense. Then there's this whole blame, but not blame, but blame. Shira 7 for your pick in men. Your mother taught you that you should exchange your body for things. Your mother taught you that. Or she didn't teach you anything, because you had that belief system before you started watching Shira 7's videos. And I do not think Shira 7 is happy. But I also don't want to demonize her or her content for teaching women how to do transactional relationships. There are lots of women that already want, I want to be taken care of. I will give you whatever you want. Just give me money. There are women who do that. Like, I think it's silly to act like there's not a subset of women who don't want to work, who don't really have a value system outside of money. And so if Shira 7 is going to give you tools to navigate transactional relationships with men who have a lot of money, men who are millionaires, multi-millionaires, okay, follow her rules then. Follow her rules. You're talking about, I want this family, I want my kids to have, you know, this fairy tale idea around the holidays and Christmas and stuff like that. That is not what Shira 7 is teaching you. She's teaching you, keep sex to yourself until you've had a man commit a certain amount of time, energy, money to you. And then after he can meet your kids, and then you can get married because you know that he's a provider. She teaches women how to pick a provider so that they can exchange their body for the money. You definitely did not do what Shira 7 said. And I know Shira 7 has come out with her own video about, you know, how Isis is stupid. I wouldn't call her stupid, right? Isis is traumatized. But I can understand why someone would say that, because you literally did not do what was told to you. That's not the rules of engagement when it comes to navigating transactional relationships. And I don't frown per se on transactional relationships. I understand, you know, sex work is a thing. Men who want to be in control of everything is a thing. Like, these things exist. Should they not exist? I don't know. Humans are complicated people that have dark sides. So all the things do exist. I think it's silly to wish they didn't exist. They do exist. How do you navigate them? You can heal and then pick somebody who's also healed or healing, who is more focused on love than money, right? They don't worship money. They know that money is important to live, but they're not worshiping money. Every time Isis brought up God, Jesus, I cringed. I was uncomfortable. I felt like I was listening to blasphemy. I felt like I was listening to somebody who was lying on God. I feel like I was listening to somebody who was being manipulative with the word, with Christianity, like using it as a tool to convey their innocence or excuse their role in something, or maybe not take accountability. Although she has said, like, she's the one that didn't see the red flags. Like, now including God into this feels very icky. Like, it feels super inappropriate and wrong, right? You can say, now I'm praying for God's healing, but to talk about your children are sacrificial lambs. Oh my God. Like, this was something that had to happen. I'm telling this story because God told me to. I really think you're lying. Like, I think you're so far down in denial that you've now told yourself this lie, that all of this is now the testimony for God. And I do love testimonies, but you are in the thick of it. Like, you really are in no position to testify about the greatness of God because you still suffering. One of the biggest things to come out is at the end, she told the truth about why she's even doing these. She's broke. She has no money. So she's going to exploit her children to get some money when you can do other things to get money. You do not have to do this to your children in order to provide for them. You talk about this family that you have, your mom is there, your sister is there. Like, go and live with somebody. There are resources for women who've been in these abusive relationships so that their children can be safe and taken care of. You still want a certain lifestyle? Like, listen, you've reached rock bottom. You're going to have to take what you can get for a while as you build yourself up. We already knew that she and her husband were like 20 years apart, but there is something about the 23 and 45 that hits different, that feels especially gross, especially when you look at her and you look at him on their wedding day, especially when you hear her tell the story. Is it the real story? I don't know. When you hear her tell what happened, like how they met, how he felt like your husband when you first date with him, right? That feeling was not intuition, that was trauma, okay? But you all didn't actually date, right? There's a reason, and she hasn't told us what this reason is, but there was another guy who was doing more financially for her, who she was living with, and she tells us that only 3 guys have met her children. I don't know. Do I believe that? It don't sound like it. It don't sound like it. It definitely sounds like she kind of goes wherever the wind blows, wherever the money is biggest. So that, right, she gave us some more details on the boyfriend that she was living with, who didn't like, her son being there. When she said the boy was like 5 or something, I was disturbed. Although I should have done the math for myself, and I have a son, right? My son is 17 years old. He's not the man of the house, right? I'm not married. I don't have a husband. I have a child of the house. Even at 17, he's my child, right? He does not have any protection, privileges. He don't have to do nothing except be a child. So I can see if she's allowed her son, even at like 5 years old, to feel like he's the man of the house, to feel like he's the king, if she's treated her child like he's her little husband, I can see a clash when an actual man comes into the picture. And this is, right, side note, why a lot of men don't want to date women with kids, because this is the kind of nonsense you're going to have to deal with. Not, you don't have to, with some women like that. My son, I have a whole other idea for a video on, like, how do you actually date men when you do have kids? Like, how do you pick somebody who's going to treat you well, treat your kids well? She definitely didn't know how. This like obsession with wanting the man to accept her kids, and so she's kind of like pairing herself with the kids as a package, which I guess comes along with it. But I would not recommend initially coming to the table saying, you have to accept me and my son. Girl, what? You don't even know you. Why would he like accept your kid too? I don't know. There's something inappropriate going on there. But she's explaining to us, everything moves so quickly with every guy she's been with. Everything moves so quickly. With every guy she's been with, everything moves so quickly. And probably, because she don't be telling the truth, every man probably felt like her husband. Because why else would you move in with a guy that you've known less than 6 months? And money is not an issue, is what she's telling us. Money was not an issue then. I don't believe that. Why would you move in with a guy so soon after meeting him? You don't know him. You haven't seen him through all the different seasons, but somehow it's appropriate for your kids to meet and live with this man. So the man wanted her son to move out and live with somebody else, right? This is a little boy. Okay. I love that she still has, I guess, the motherly senses, try to kick in at some point. So that's the breaking point for her. If you don't want my child, then you really don't want me. And so we're going to move out. And the old man called her the next day to say, hey, what's up? How you doing? Y'all have been on, I don't know, 1 date, 2 dates previously. So this is like 4 months earlier or something like that. I don't know. It is such a weird story. She's not telling it well. But it just sounds like desperation. What if money wasn't really an issue or was an issue? Are there no other resources? You can just move in with a random man. She's like, oh, we didn't move in until we got married. It was a week. What are you talking about? That man called you on a Wednesday, and you were moving in the next week Thursday. Okay, because y'all got married like 2 days later. That is so weird. And now I'm just really, usually I don't hear cases like this unless I'm working with them. Like this is a person sitting across from me. I have heard the craziest stories, right? And I can promise you, I've heard stuff crazier than this. I've heard crazier, wilder, more traumatizing things than this. I have, okay? There are a lot of whacked out people out there. But the way she's telling this story is right up there with some of the craziest things that I've heard women do for a man. It's like the fairy tale Delulu is strong with this one. It's like she really thought she was flexing with we waited a week. She really thought she was flexing with, I made him ask my mom for permission. Girl, you've known this man weeks. If you could see yourself in this lady, I want you to see a trauma therapist, right? That's not really a thing, but a therapist or a psychologist who specializes in trauma, complex trauma, codependence, emotional immaturity, abuse, sexual abuse. Like the issues here run so deep. And when she talks about being violated by the neighbor's husband when she was 8 or 9 years old. That's not the only time. Right? That's not the only time. And we know that she was, assaulted by her husband multiple times. And then the way she told that story, which she wasn't going to tell if they didn't point blank ask her about it. This is not the only time. Like this lady has been victimized so much, like between 8, 9 and 23, so much trauma this lady has experienced. She deleted all the videos on her YouTube channel, which I think is appropriate because the things she's teaching are lies. Like she's definitely not a qualified person to be coaching any woman into any kind of relationship. Even if you haven't looked at her channel, right? I want you to look at other channels with a critical eye, whether they're vlogging about their life, or teaching you how to heal like me. I want you to really pay attention to what I'm saying. I want you to really pay attention to my demeanor, like the things I don't say, like all of my nonverbals, all of the things I say in between the teaching that can help you understand that what I'm saying is congruent with the things I do, the way I live my life. When you look at a woman like Isis or women who are living one life but saying another thing, you really have to pay attention and like listen with your eyes closed or watch with no sound to realize that they ain't doing nothing but lying. So toxic signs, red flags that she talked about in her video, there's just even more in this interview. During month 1, because she's only known this man for a month or so, right? During month 1, the red flags came up, right? A really big one that I don't know. I can't imagine staying with a man. Okay. The man had his ex, who was looking for him, wanted to be with him, come to his house. She said she had a short conversation with the girl and that she was 21 years old. But she said she looked like a child. She said she didn't have any development. Like she was like straight up and down. And if she's coming to the house, this is somebody who wanted to be in an emotional relationship with him. And she asked him, how could you be attracted to a woman like that when she just looks like a child? And Isis herself doesn't really look mature is not the right word. She doesn't look mature, but she also doesn't have like a womanly body, if you could say that, right? She kind of looks like she has like a teenage body still. You could ask why he was attracted to you. Any 40 something, it's not the age, it is the age difference. Significant age differences, you need to be mentally prepared that this is a man who wants control. He doesn't want to be challenged. He wants you to stand there and look pretty. He wants you to agree with him. He wants you to do what you're supposed to do. That is kind of just what goes into it. There are anomalies, right? But the rule is older men want to pick a woman that they can control. That's why they do not partner with women that are their age. She also said she saw him as insecure and controlling, that he would, sort of make up that she was cheating on him or looking at other guys or straying. Similar to what I'm saying. These men have issues. One of the guys asked her, what was the sex like? Which, I mean, is a fair question. I don't really expect her to tell the truth. But yeah, she said it was like vanilla sex, regular, no issues, except he raped her. How many times? 4? I don't know if that's true either. But when she acted like a rag doll or a dead fish, he stopped. Like, he asked for a divorce the next day. It's just so strange. There's so much in between there. Like, did she ever tell anybody? Does he have friends? Did she ever tell anybody? She knew it felt wrong because she was crying uncontrollably while he was doing it and telling him to stop and no. But he would just keep doing it. Okay. Additionally, she found out that she was his 4th wife. And all throughout this, she is making content about how to become a trophy wife. Moving on. She said she was happy in her marriage. They were married for 5 years. I'm guessing they had 2 or 3 kids together because she said she had 5. She acknowledges that the advice that she was giving to women was not appropriate. Definitely a hot mess. Girl, I'm glad you could see that. Things started unraveling for Isis when Dr. Spirit came on. And I definitely think Dr. Spirit knows what she's talking about. And even in her communication with Isis, those, brief 30 minutes, whatever it was, she soft-balled accountability. Like, Dr. Spirit is not a Yama Van Zandt in her communication. She is not beating you over the head. She's definitely a mental health professional that knows how to address someone who's been traumatized. Isis couldn't even handle the softball accountability. Like, she became more and more defensive the longer Dr. Spirit was out. And I think that's when most of the truth would come out. And she, at that point, was really heavy in the Jesus and I only take my message from the Lord. And girl, nobody believes you. You didn't realize that because these guys are so sympathetic to you. They feel so bad for you. They're really not challenging you in the types of questions that they're asking. They're just getting information from you to share with everybody on their platform. It's also a lie that she's doing this to spread the message of sexual trauma and that incest is something that's happening within families. That's also a lie. I liked when Dr. Spirit explained, like, you don't have to be the one to do this. Like, there are lots of people doing this advocacy work. I mean, if you come to my channel, like, I talk a lot about trauma. There are lots of people in real life, out in the fields, going into homes, the defects of all the agencies who are educating people, doing the hard work to reduce the trauma that kids experience. And child abuse has decreased. Sort of like all crime. I think the 70s and 80s was the highest point of crime in the United States. Since then, it's decreased. But Dr. Spirit definitely realized that Isis was giving snapshots, like she said, and not the whole story. And then helped her admit that, you really just don't trust yourself, right? This is at the end of the day, you don't trust yourself. I was curious where her kids were. Were they in the back? Or with her mom? Like, I'm curious where her kids were. I know they have to be places, like they have to go to school and stuff, but when she's not with them, I am curious where they are. Towards the end of the interview, they brought on callers and one of the guys was saying, you know, you're quoting scripture and the Bible, but the Bible says that you shouldn't stand for rape. And right, I think it's appropriate for ISIS to get, you know, defensive. This guy was coming on pretty strong. And I liked Dr. Spirit's explanation that oftentimes people who've been traumatized really don't know the difference, right, between controlling and manipulation and abuse, and that what she was going through with her husband when he assaulted her felt like something that was just happening to her. Often victims feel like they're the only one. And so it would be very hard for someone like ISIS to make the connection that if he could do this to you, his wife, he is doing terrible things to other people too, and could possibly do this to his own children. I don't see how, you know, the mind of ISIS would have been able to make that connection on her own. Dr. Spirit also mentioned the importance of appropriate sex education and calling it a penis or a vagina. I love that. Not using play words to describe body parts, because you never know when you're going to need somebody to say, he touched me on my vagina, versus he touched me down there, or he touched my, what else did they say? My coochie, or whatever it is. It definitely hits different when you use the actual word. Dr. Spirit was definitely on the same team I am on, that this does not need to be something that you continue to share on social media. That thank you for making your initial video. You have over 2.5 million views, but now is a great time for you to fall back. Dr. Spirit said fade to black and do your healing in private. In the end, this is when ISIS said money, right? She's continuing to do this for money, not for the sharing of the information. She said God wouldn't let her move on until she told her story. She's lying. She's lying. She is doing this for money. And even if the guys that Hardy initiated didn't pay her, I don't know if they paid their guests or not. Even if they didn't pay her, she is trying to get more eyeballs on herself so that she can get the GoFundMe more money, even though she said they're not letting her take out the money from the GoFundMe. I don't know what's going on. The goal is money. That's the goal. That's why she's still doing this, for money. I liked when Dr. Spirit said you could be traumatizing yourself in new ways by having all of this, you know, outside opinions coming towards you and your kids. You think they're not going to figure out who your kids are? You think this story is not going to follow your kids in perpetuity? Like, now it's a great time to just fall back, disappear from the internet. Give your kids the protection that they need. But again, this is a woman who has no idea what protection looks like. Like, small. Protection is if the father touches sexually the kids, then I have to go to, you know, the hospital. Beyond that, like extreme, she has no idea what it really means to protect herself and her kids. She just exploit herself, exploit her kids. ISIS saying it's not about me. This is something God told me. I don't believe it. This is her lying to herself. More of the delulu. And I liked when Dr. Spirit said, you know, think about how can I heal myself when I don't even know the blind spots I have to do the healing. So I'm glad ISIS is in therapy, getting what she needs. And then towards the end, MIMS shows up. You know, MIMS, make it make sense. Calling himself Chandler. I don't know what his real name is, but he's like, I want to stay anonymous. You know, he's the one that brought up, like, you know, you're also telling your kid's story. But ISIS just started crying and talking about God. So again, lack of accountability. I think this is inappropriate to continue doing online, on social media. I really hope news stations do not ask this woman for an interview, because she needs to be on the therapist's couch doing this intensive therapy and not crying uncontrollably for the world to see. Now is not the time. That is not what your kids need. I'm going to say a prayer for ISIS. I hope you say a prayer for her and her kids as well, because they're going to need all the positive energy that they can get. I've worked with lots of families that have experienced incest and sexual abuse from friends, family members. So I know, like, there can be deep healing and lots of thriving after the hard work is done. But the hard work is not done out in public on all these social platforms for all these eyes to see. It just adds a stagnation and distracts from the fact that you need to be doing a lot of this internal work. So let me know what you think in the comments. I know a lot of people are covering this story and maybe not with much kindness, right? So I feel for her in that way. But I mean, she's the one that brought the story to the public. So like this video if you enjoyed it, share it with someone. who's been following the ISIS story or needs some feedback on how they need to focus on themselves. And thank you for watching.